Thank you. So, as you can see, today I'm going to talk about. This is a good spot. Thank you very much. Today I'm going to talk about human behavior, and here's just a couple of the topics that I'm going to touch on. And I'm not going to get too in depth about any particular area. I think it's really important for everybody to kind of mull over some of these different areas that we go over, and try to explore how some of these things can be used in the workshops that we're actually going to be doing later. So, kind of the introduction that I wanted to kind of give, the overview I wanted to give was from a user behavior standpoint, it's extremely important that everybody understands that everything that is around us, everything that we touch, everything that we look at is a result, or the root of it is because of user behavior. Something was designed for someone specific, or someone has acted a specific way, and things have been placed, things have been done as a result of that human behavior. And one of the things I actually was I thought it was funny. I was making a comparison. I watched the other day this movie called My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen that movie. And one of the really funny parts of that movie is the father, who's a very, very proud Greek man. He would say, "Well, if you can give me any word, I can find the root of that word to be Greek." And I think a good comparison is if you can really think about anything or look at anything around you, probably the chances are the root of that is something that was done for human behavior. Someone needed something, someone had a desire for something, and as a result, someone created something for them. So it's extremely important to kind of take that information and use that as a basis for anything that you design. You're designing for someone. And that kind of segues a little bit into this quote from Plato, where the very first thing he calls out is human behavior, it flows from desire. So everybody has a desire to do something. They have a desire to walk from point A to point B in order to accomplish C. Well, everything is driven from that human emotion, and going from there, everything, it's, at some point at the root of it is from human emotion or some sort of cognitive behavior, knowledge or decision making. These are the kind of main areas that I wanted to talk about. There's obviously a lot more. There's a lot more things that are kind of in depth in terms of human behavior, but some of these I'm going to be touching on. I think one of the important things to realize is you don't have to be a PhD in behavioral sciences in order to understand human behavior. We all observe it every day. If maybe you have a significant other, that person in and out. From a behavioral standpoint, there's chances are that you and that person were a match for a reason, or whatever it may be, and you're able to observe all these different types of human behaviors, and use that information in order to make decisions about how you do things throughout your life. And that's just one comparison. But from a cultural standpoint, just a couple of things to consider whenever you're creating designs is different things like language and age groups, or maybe from a culture standpoint you're creating something for college students or whatever it may be. There's all different types of cultures, or cultural kind of subsections that you need to be thinking about. From a social standpoint, everybody has a desire to be social in some way or form. And that's extremely important to think about. What kind of influences people have. Are they really interested in or concerned about being socially accepted? So all those things need to be thought about as well. From an emotional standpoint, and this is kind of a very key one, is the core of a lot of things that are designed, or a lot of things that exist out in the world is just it was created or is designed from a basis of human emotion. So like it's talking about desire, or someone has a desire to do something. We want to create happiness in a certain situation, and designs are all kind of a means to get to that emotion. When I was just talking to someone actually today earlier, I was talking about movie scripts, and how if you think about watching a movie, you're kind of exploring these different types of emotions, or you're trying to connect on a personal level with a movie. That movie script was actually formulated, and it was created and designed as a way to elicit some sort of emotion from the individual. And if you're not connecting with those people, on an emotional level for that actual movie, then chances are your script was not structured in a way that, that works. And there's a lot of other things that could have had effect on that, like the culture or the social aspect of it. Does it resonate well with people? And cognitive behaviors. So if you think about things like, what kind of patterns throughout my life have I been able to capture and store in my memory and use that as a basis for making decisions? So, you go into decision making and things like that. The first, throughout all these different kind of behavioral areas, I wanted to go ahead and give an example of each, just so, we can have kind of an example. From a cultural standpoint, if this particular one is, I'm a person in the US and I'm looking to buy a house in the UK. Well, what's interesting about that is from a cultural perspective, there's kind of language barriers, or there's things that are different from a cultural perspective that you need to be thinking about. So I'm on a website and I'm looking for a house in the UK, and I'm using these search parameters in order to identify a house that I want. Well, I wanted to find a house with a garden, but what's interesting is from a cultural perspective, and from a behavioral standpoint, specifically language, a garden in the UK is actually just a backyard, and a garden in, at least what we consider in the US, is actually like a flower garden or like a vegetable garden or something of that nature. So that's just one kind of example. And another one is something as easy as gestures, right? So if you were, and this is an example of someone wants to create a design for a sign, and in that sign you wanted to have like a thumbs up or something, right? Well, in the US, a thumbs up means cool or great, but in other countries it's offensive, and it can mean something pretty rude. So, if just thinking about from a cultural standpoint how these different types of things, go from one area to the other from a cultural perspective. Obviously there's no way for you to know right off the bat or to know to even look for that, but sometimes you just have to kind of do some testing in order to figure out whether or not, that's actually a taboo thing or not. And I wanted to see if anybody could, come up with some sort of cultural behavior that they at least know of or that may have popped up, throughout me talking. Mm-hmm.
Test.
So in Asian countries, if you point directly at someone or like try to get them to come at you,
Mm-hmm.
it's very rude, and they do it like this.
Yeah,
So-
that's actually, it's interesting too, because it can be about anything. It's gestures is a really big one, and how that's going to translate over to something that you're designing. Factoring those different cultural things, is extremely important. And if we're thinking outside the scope of just geographical things or a cultural from a racial standpoint, a religious standpoint, it's extremely important to think about how that may impact who you're designing for. So the next area is social behavior. And the example that I wanted to give was people's desire to be social and to be accepted, and wanting to conform to some level of kind of a social gathering. In this sense, a paid-forward watering schedule. So if we were to think about a community garden, it's a garden that is ran by a bunch of people, and you wanted to come up with a unique way to actually have those people do some sort of paid-forward thing to help out a little bit. And you put together a watering schedule. Well, one person, they actually water someone else's plant, and then opt for free without even asking, and then the next person comes in and they go and they water someone else's plant, and then it's just a continuous cycle of a pay-it-forward style scenario. An extremely important thing to notice is that the only reason that those people are actually doing that is from a behavioral standpoint, a social standpoint, that they want to have some sort of influence over each other from the pay it forward standpoint. And from a social standpoint, they want to be accepted by everybody else in the community garden by participating in what's going on. And they also are looking to conform to this particular situation. And so, if you start to kind of tie in all those different types of behavioral things from a social standpoint, you'll see that, it applies to so many different things that people do, And, this is just kind of one example that I wanted to give. And another one, and I don't know if anybody's had to do this in recent time, is if you had to design a seating chart for a wedding. You're not just going to place people willy-nilly, wherever. You need to be conscious of what kind of social impact you'll have on people by placing them in a certain area. So obviously, people typically think about, well, I'm going to put family members together, but I can't put X person with X person because they're going to fight, blah, 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 blah. I can't put these friends together. I'm going to put them at this table. So, all those decisions that you're making is from a social behavior standpoint. Everything is really just you wanting to make sure everybody gets along, that, from a social perspective, people are able to, come together as a group, and then the outcome is a good design for a seating chart. And I'll see if anybody, there's some, I can give an example of a social behavior that would pick on myself, but can anybody think of a social behavior? Get her the microphone. Thank you. I'm going to have one of these at the end of these sections, so we can hand those around.
I think meetup.com is an awesome example of social behavior because you can join a group and you're instantly accepted into an organization of like-minded people who enjoy maybe the same activities.
Sure, yeah, that's a great example. Meetup is a prime example of people who have a desire to be social, because you're not going to go to a meetup and just sit in the back and not, you can, but you're not going to sit in the back and just not participating in whatever, subject or topic is going on. I'll go ahead and go on to the next one. So this is one that for anybody that has a website where you're actually making money off the website, it's extremely kind of important one to understand. This is, we're going to go over kind of some emotional behaviors here, but if you have a website and you're selling something on the website, in this case you're selling strawberry seeds, and you notice that maybe you looked at your analytics or something on your website, and you notice that a lot of people are buying strawberry seeds. Well, there's really no reason that you should bury that in 5 different steps of your website, right? You should find a way to try and bring that to the surface, because chances are there's other people who may be looking for that just get frustrated, going through 5 different steps. So, from an information architecture standpoint, what you would do is you would say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and bring seeds to the front as maybe like a featured item or a featured category. And I'm going to try and elicit some emotions from people from maybe an impulse standpoint, a joy standpoint. Because chances are if you're able to bring something to the fore like that, very easily and very kind of prominently, you're going to get some level of increase in the amount of I'm going to start using some more words here, but from a conversion standpoint and all that. So just thinking about what kind of emotions and stuff people feel whenever they're actually interacting with a website, and how something like analytics can build that out, is extremely important. And another one which everybody looks for whenever they're frustrated with a website is a support area. And having easy access to something like that, it's very kind of cut and dry, and that's the reason why a lot of people you'll see from a pattern standpoint, something like support is always in the top right hand corner, whether it's live chat, a support link, or whatever it may be. We can actually skip past this because I'm running a little low on time. This is one that I thought was extremely important to talk about from a cognitive behavior standpoint, is all the different patterns that exist out in life. this one is someone's walking into a Home Depot or some sort of home improvement store, and they're looking for something specific. Well, from a kind of a cognitive pattern standpoint, or from a kind of a learned signage standpoint, you'll always notice that there is a high sign, a sign kind of within, kind of close to your eye level, or maybe like a lower sign. They're all in the same specific areas. And it's done that way for a reason. It's because for the longest time, if you go to any grocery store or anything like that, these signs, they sit in these same patterns because people are trained to look in those particular areas. And that can be applied to so many different things. The reason why the sign behind me is a place, above my head prominently is because we've all learned to look up, at different signage and stuff and learn to expect it there. If it was on the floor, it wouldn't be as prominent of a placement. And so, that kind of pattern recognition is extremely important to understand and look for. What if people come to expect, and what kind of learned behaviors do they have when you're designing for them? Because once you understand that, then you can truly, create a design that is catered to them specifically, and not just what your interpretation of what may be a good design is. Actually, I want to see if anybody, has any examples of maybe like a learned pattern or something. Get that microphone here in the back.
I think a good example would be a grocery store when you're checking out and you've got the magazines and the candies, and it's like right there where kids can just sort of reach for it.
Yeah.
You go in with a specific thing in mind, but they know that when you're checking out, they put those last minute impulse buys
Yep.
right there by the register.
And that's, so that's a good combination of things. So that's from a cognitive behavior. We all expect at a checkout line to expect, to see candies and magazines and things of that nature, but it plays on those emotions too of that last minute impulse buy, the joy, the joy of thinking about eating a Reese's peanut butter cup or whatever it may be. And, so it's extremely important as well. I don't know what just happened. So, the thing to kind of take away from this and bring into your workshops is, you're designing for people. You're not designing for yourself. A lot of mistakes made from a design standpoint is people, they think about, how they're going to create a design, and in their mind they're like, well, that's the best way to do it, without actually asking their targeted user or whoever it is that they're designing for, maybe how they feel about something or what they think about something, or observing them in their natural environment in order to identify, the best, the best way to design for them. So and the last thing, I'll kind of reiterate, just always be mindful that you're designing for specific people, not yourself. Don't create a design in order to kind of meet your own agenda. Make sure that you're designing for the people that you're targeting. This thing doesn't work anymore. I think I hit a button. So this is kind of the last slide, just employee strategy. And these are all the different types of things that you can do in order to identify these behaviors. The one that obviously is up here a lot is ask questions. If you're not asking questions, then you're not getting the information that you need. There's only so much that you can do people watching. Watching people in their natural setting and observing them and seeing, maybe, from a gesture standpoint, how they're doing things, or maybe, where they're standing, or, you can do research online. There's a lot of stuff available online, although it's not always accurate. It's still something that can help support, what you've done. Like, the cultural things I was talking about is extremely prominent online. A lot of people talk about that. And to review data. So, one of the things a lot of mistakes people make is they don't have some sort of way to capture, what kind of information they provide online. So you have a website, but you're not actually gathering any data from user behavior as far as moving from point A to point B. So implementing something like analytics, if we're talking specifically about websites, something like analytics is of the utmost importance, because something like Google Analytics, it has such powerful information on there now. It shows you user flows and drop-offs and all sorts of things that can really help you identify, at a surface level, human behavior, and then you can use that as a basis for asking questions to people.
Hi, Seth. My name's David, and I really appreciate the presentation you gave. That helped me just have more clarity about the different angles of looking at the same thing. Mm-hmm. Which, for me, information architecture is about awareness and understanding, and then sharing that. So that was very, very helpful. I was wondering if there's any way that we would have access to your presentation today, or some of the notes, some of the slides.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be available.
How would we go about doing that?
It's going to be available on SlideShare later, and we'll have a link available for it, and we can post it up on Twitter.
Okay.
Okay, and all the attendees are going to be emailed the SlideShare links as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, yeah, again, thanks for your talk. My name is Eris, and you mentioned at the beginning that we're designing for purpose. My question as a creative person is, when we're creating art, is there some sort of an implication for information architecture to come into that, or do we design not for purpose, but for enjoyment solely? I've always wondered about that crossover.
I think it depends. I mean, when it comes to something like, if we're even talking about maybe a painting, right? Obviously, most of the time that's done for yourself. It's an expression of yourself, and you're not necessarily designing or creating something for someone. Some people do create art for people in that respect. Maybe it's like a self-portrait or something like that. But if we're talking specifically about maybe graphics and how information architecture, should it be embedded in it? I think it should always be designed for a purpose, in my opinion at least. Just for the sheer reason that that's the way that you're going to get most of the satisfaction out of it. Well, I'm sorry. The actual end person that you're designing for. That's the way that you're going to get most satisfaction out of them that you're designing for. I don't know if that answers your question. Okay.
Neil Cosentino with Camelot, Florida, a think tank. How do you design for the virtual world?
That's a good question, because it's not tangible at all, right? So you kind of put something out there, and there's a level of desensitization. It's not easily grasped, So I think that's where you have a lot of the technologies that are available to us. So I was talking about analytics. Having something like that and the power of that is extremely important, because you don't have, you can't be always sitting next to the people that you're designing for if we're talking about the virtual world. So if you're talking about, websites or whatever it may be, these people are behind a computer, and there's a natural communication barrier, and I think as far as designing for them, you just have to use as many tools that are available to you as possible, and make the best decisions that you can, and then continue to analyze and iterate through whatever you're doing to a point to where it's about as good as it can get. Sometimes it's not as it's never going to get there, but you can do the best that you can.